All right, guys, welcome back. Market Mondays, October 16th. It's almost over, y'all.
Yeah.
We are in that fourth quarter run. Fall has officially approached. Leaves are falling off the trees.
Temperature has dropped.
It's football season. It's one of them ones, man.
Yeah.
Interesting times that we're living in, for sure.
It's a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, for sure. So we're not going to waste no time. But we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the biggest event of the Midwest this year, Chicago, Illinois, Sunday. The moment has come. Sunday, October 22nd, Market Mondays World Tour, last domestic stop. Ian Dunlap, Earn Your Leisure, 19 Keys, Ross Mack.
Incredible.
We will have some other surprises.
Yeah.
We will have some other surprises. We will be talking about real estate. We will be talking about stocks. We will be talking about trading. We will be talking about investing. We will be talking about Web3. We will be talking about AI. This is an opportunity for you to not only better your situation, but to meet great people. Over 1,000 people in the building. Great opportunity to network with fellow Chicagoans and other people from the Midwest. Indiana will be in the building.
Big facts. Sure. 219, Gary, East Chicago, Maryville.
Chicago.
What are we doing? Valpo.
Stop
I can't
playing
wait.
with them.
Yes, Milwaukee will be in the building.
That's a
big
fact.
facts. Peoria, Illinois. AJ Guyton.
Detroit will be in the building.
Shout out to AJ Guyton, Indiana's
Shout
own.
to AJ Guyton.
Calvert Cheney and them.
Yeah, shout to AJ Moye, my dog. He'll be there.
This is one of them ones, man. This is one of them ones, man. Chicago, great city, man. One of the favorite places that I love to go to, man. So this is gonna be a legendary event. Get your tickets now. Click the link in the bio. Click the link that's pinned here. Click the link on our website. Click the link in Ian's bio. Please click the link and go to Market Monday Chicago World Tour. The bottom level is already sold out.
Yeah.
So there's only a few seats left at the top. Get in the building.
Yeah.
This will sell out. Get in the building. Be there or be square. Chicago this Sunday, October 22nd. And we on a legendary run when it comes to events. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, they were like, how do you know it's gonna sell out? Well,
every event,
track record.
Every event that we've done for the last 24 months has been legendary, from Market Mondays in Harlem at the Apollo to Market Mondays in Madison Square Garden to 2 sold-out shows back-to-back in Toronto to Royal Albert Hall to another Market Monday show in London. Let's not even talk about South by Southwest and New York Fashion Week and Art Basel and all of that good stuff. InvestFest speaks for itself. No need to even mention that. So this is a pattern. This is what you call a pattern here, guys. So Chicago, we're not going to leave you empty-handed.
Hey, how was our chart looking? The trajectory was incredible.
To the upside. Yes.
Every time.
And Ian will be giving a couple 10. Is it 10 giveaways?
Yeah, 10 giveaways. So 10 will be put in Stock Club and 10 will be put in Sniper. I'll be collecting your emails that night. You guys will be uploaded the next day. No grievances, no worries. And presentation is almost done. So it's probably my best one since InvestFest last year. So I'm going to put on the show. Key's going to put on the show. I'm going to convince them to tell y'all how to build a multi-million-dollar media empire while so many other media empires are failing. Shout out to y'all. Put y'all in chat if y'all see the empires failing. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. Shout out to Power 92. Shout out to Mayha, DJ Ferris, Chicago. Turn up. I can't wait.
I'm a Chicagoan to Chicagoans.
Coming from the South. South.
Play a big part in Chicago like Queen Latifah.
Hey, Ian, you think I could get a slide in your presentation? I got some results I want to talk about. You think that's all right?
Listen, when I saw the run of the show, I'm like, wait, hold on. I got an ISO for you.
Yeah, let's talk about some results. Everybody talk about what they're doing, what they haven't done. Let's talk about what we have done and show them a little bit of the results that have happened over the past 12 months. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Chicago, get your tickets.
It's gonna be one
this Sunday. This Sunday. It's the last final call. All right. Outside of that, big episode of Earn Your Leisure tomorrow. Ray Lewis, Super Bowl champion, one of the greatest players of all time. Great motivational speaker, great entrepreneur, great person. Very, very inspiring conversation that we had with him last Super Bowl. We've been sitting on this for a while, so we're gonna
For
put
a long time.
For sure. We're putting that Ray Lewis conversation out tomorrow. Shout out to Ray Lewis, the great Ray Lewis. And yeah, that's it. Get your tickets to Market Mondays, Chicago. That's the most important thing in this equation right now.
Yeah, and shout out to everybody that tapped into the Van Jones episode last week. The feedback has been incredible. Everybody,
amazing episode.
Appreciate it. Everybody that texted us messages about it and things they took away, appreciate that greatly. So love is love. But y'all know how this works, man. It's time for our disclaimer. Do your own research. Our content is intended to be used and must be used for informational purposes only. It's very important you do your own analysis before making any of this investment based on your own personal circumstances. You should take independent financial advice from a professional in connection with, or independently research and verify any information that you find on our show and wish to rely upon, whether for the purpose of making an investment decision or otherwise. People continue to do the research, continue to share the research. When it's great, when you use it, when you execute it, you make some money from it. Show love to the person you got it from. Love is love.
Yes.
Ian, yeah. Any updates, Ian?
Yeah, Stock Club call will be Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central. Stock Club is currently going for $4.99 per month. So for everyone who says I charge too much and yada yada, here's your time. You only have until November 2nd to be a part of the deal, and that will be going away. And if I've made you money, please put yes in chat. See y'all in Chicago. Get your tickets. Cannot wait.
Yeah. Shout out to Chicago. Shout out to two Chicago legends, Melvin and Monique Rodriguez. Happy birthday to her. They told us that they are going to be in the building, so shout out to them.
It's amazing.
For sure. So let's talk about Airbnb, shall we? Put the post up on Instagram this morning that Airbnb CEO, Brian Chesney, he recently said that the company is fundamentally broken amongst shrinking profits. So this is pretty disturbing, and it comes from challenges that are faced in 2023 and previous years prior to this. Hosts have staged protests due to declining profits, complicating matters. Competitive Vrbo has seen significant growth during this period. To add to Airbnb's challenges last month, New York City, which makes up a large portion of Airbnb profits, induced stricter rules on short-term rentals, putting immense pressure on the platform's operation there. They've been under attack from the hotel lobby for a very long time.
It's probably from inception.
Yes. Yeah. So, in response to these setbacks, Chesney has expressed intentions to revert to the company's core values, focusing on consistent quality, affordable, top-notch service, and reliability for its users. And it is notable to mention our good friend Andre Lyon from Cool and Dre. He actually commented on it, and he said in the post, he said Airbnb and their founder happen to be one of the very few companies that care about our community. Stay tuned. You'll see what I'm talking about. Shout out to Brian, Breach, LL, and the whole team.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Okay.
So got some up his sleeve?
I don't know. So how do we feel about Airbnb? Airbnb is a company that I've been a shareholder in for a long time. So in full disclosure. But yeah, they've had some pretty challenging times. So how do we feel about Airbnb?
DJ Clue voice, do you remember when you are looking to be disruptive, you always, number one, have to, please write this down. You have to look back for where your pushback is going to come from your enemy's sideline. So if you have lobbying and litigation against you, it's going to be tough. Number two, when all these companies started to go up during COVID and had a decline in 2021, most of the companies that were promising individual investors to be able to make a lot of money doing something, you have to be airtight in what you are promising and what you're going to deliver. So like if I have to book an Airbnb and there's safety issues and I have to pay a cleaning fee and a dog removal fee and a hair removal fee, the fees are adding up and it's not in favor of the consumer. Number three, when you look and you're building a brand, I think it's really important to state, what do you do that no one else in your space is capable of doing? There is a convenient side of Airbnb, and you get more space, but the reliability isn't there in comparison to, I don't know, let's say a Four Seasons or a Marriott, if you will. I think they got a little bit too hyped off of the quantitative easing, low interest rates when everything was doing well. But I said it here a couple years ago on the show, like, I don't love the stock. Like, it's a mixed use real estate play. It was a great idea, but the profit margins, once again, are not where they need to be. The high was at 219. It's currently at 125.58. Not the biggest drop that we've seen of companies recently, but they have some stiff competition in VRBO, the whole hotel industry. And I think people got fed up with paying too much. Like, it used to be, if you booked the Airbnb, it was on par or as affordable as a hotel. That kind of went away. And I think everyone ended up pricing all the consumers out. And here we are. Final lesson: do what is best for the consumers that you're serving. So when we do hit a recession or a down market, your consumer base does not leave with you. Not a big fan of the stock. It's definitely not what I would deem Coinbase or the like, which, we'll talk about next week. But this would be a C minus, and hopefully they can turn things around. Shout out to Dre.
Shout out to Dre. It's an interesting time when you talk about inflation, you talk about interest rates rising. These are the effects of it. So even if you look at the high of Airbnb, when did it happen? It happened during pandemic. So there was a boost in short-term rentals. There was a boost in people investing in properties and having the income to have properties that they can rent out. That changes, right? When interest rates rise, now people can't afford to have that second property anymore, because who wants to pay 7% when they do it? In addition, and you look at places where Airbnb was thriving, regulations have changed. But even in places like Arizona, Phoenix specifically, in Tennessee, during the time that Airbnb was at its peak, the number of investment properties was outweighing the number of home sales.
Insane.
Right. So now that flips on its head when you raise interest rates. Now people are not paying, like I said, that 7%. That number is going to come down swiftly. And if your business model is based on having people rent, well, you're going to see that these are the long-term effects. But when I hear a CEO talk like that, that's cause for alarm.
I commend them for it first, but I agree.
It's honest. It's an honest take, but it's an alarming take. Because the company hasn't been public for, it's only been 4 years, not even, right? To have this type of urgency call this early is it's cause to take a step back and really look what we're doing. You're still investing in it, so what's your thoughts?
The stock, if you really look at it, the stock hasn't really done that bad.
It hasn't.
It debuted in 2020 at around $139. It peaked at $206 during COVID, and now it's at $125. Its 52-week high is $154. So it's not like a Coinbase, or it's not like a lot of these other stocks or Square. Let's say we were just talking about Square last week, who dropped like 80%. It's relatively held. It's kind of around the same area that it debuted at, with a highly anticipated debut in 2020. So that's encouraging. That, for the trouble that it's had, it's still kind of held. It's held strong. It hasn't fully collapsed. So I don't think Airbnb is going anywhere. It's like Uber. But they have to figure some things out, reevaluate some things. But I think that I don't see it just falling off the face of the map. I think it's a good idea. It's something that is needed, solves an issue. There's always going to be a need for housing and people to stay places. So yeah, I think that they're having some tough times right now, but I think they'll be able to get through it.
The only concern I have is if we're in a high interest rate environment, and this is the issues that you're having in year 3. Who knows how long we're going to be in a high interest rate environment, right? There's no, we could say like, hey, they're not going to raise rates again, but Fed chair may say, hey, we are raising rates. And now we're talking about 8%, which is, even furthermore sets you back inside of your business model. It's not like, I remember when they first, it was like, they haven't even, expanded to the international landscape like they were going to, which is still an opportunity for them. But here, in their home base, and you said New York is one of the biggest locations for them in terms of rentals. that interest rate issue is something that's going to linger for the next few years at least.
I agree. I'll give one negative and two positives. When you begin to price people out of homes because people are trying to buy them as investment properties to then flip, that's going to cause an issue, and people are going to have a pushback in terms of legislation and complaining to legislature, city council, etc. So that's something you have to understand in your brand and in your business, like who you're going to upset. But like Rashad said, the business isn't horrible. Gross margin is 82.15%. Profit margin is 22%. Operating margin is 21%. Return on assets is 12.5%. $9 billion in revenue. Not bad. I think they need to make some adjustments. I think we do need to give him credit, though, for being honest in this environment. Mm-hmm. We're not hearing a bunch of honesty from most CEOs. Most are being unfavorable in what they are reporting. I do commend him for one of the things that I talked about initially in the show at InvestFest at Market Mondays Live. When I'm evaluating the business, is the character of the founder. And for him to come forward and say that we're in trouble, that's actually a great sign. I don't know if they'll turn it around, but in terms of character, at least he's not in the Sam Bankman-Fried type area where he's like lying about gains or lying about what the state of the company is. It kind of reminds me of like when Mitch Kupchak was trying to get LeBron before LeBron came, and they identified LA was not doing as well as they should have, and then they finally made some adjustments, and then they won in a bubble. We have to commend him for being honest about where things are in their business.
What was the negative?
The business model is broken. So he told a truth that should not have been told, and I'm sure it's unfavorable among shareholders, but if he's looking out for the longevity of his career, he did the right thing. I don't see how you continue to have pretty good margins, but then you have to compete against hotels. And especially the biggest thing they didn't address, and rest in peace, Pop Smoke, when you didn't fix people getting robbed and killed in your properties.
How can you fix that?
That's something they have to worry about. It sucks. Like, for example, you guys just went through it for InvestFest. I won't say the number y'all spent on security that never gets talked about. When everyone say y'all charged, that y'all told me that number. I said on the wait, this is for security or just the metal detectors? What? Okay, you have, because Lord forbid if something happened there, we wouldn't have thought anything would happen, but they would have said, Rashad, it's your fault. Airbnb would have had to figure out a way. And the number, so I even hit some people up. I was like, yo, they charge too much. If you knew the security bill, you'll stop all that talking. I would have just did InvestFest virtual. What? So Airbnb has to find ways to be more secure and safe, because if the risk is it can cost my life, I don't want to go there. I'm sorry.
How much angst do you put or weight do you put in Verbo and them taking a piece of the margin of their business, right? It's just one of those things when we talk about when you're being the leader inside of a space. And anytime we talk about disruption, we always talk about Airbnb, we talk about Uber and how much disruption they've caused. But then there's always that next person that's watching and seeing your business model and saying, how can we replicate it? How can we do it better? What do you think about the margin that they've taken from Airbnb?
I think they'll have an impact. I was a fan of Verbo before Airbnb came into the scene, but I think the biggest player we have to worry about is Expedia, because at some point, if that rentals market is really attractive, they're the king maker in that market. They'll find a way. That's why I say, like, anytime you get into a space, I'm not looking directly at who is my quote unquote competitors. I'm looking at who is bigger that can kill me. Cardi said, investing in Birkins has been less stressful than investing in real estate. And everyone said, what does she know? Net worth $80 million. From what I heard, she has 17 properties. I keep saying, if her and The Rock and Jason Momoa get together and start trading futures, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. These are the things you have to think about as a business owner. So I think Expedia is more of a bigger existential threat to their business than VRBO, but I think they do need to make some adjustments to the business. But if Airbnb wants to call in and bring us on as advisors and help mitigate these and bring up the shareholder value and stock price, hey man, let's see, $9 million, $10 million, we get it done.
Yeah, the new super host.
Big facts. Big facts. So,
all right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the Israel and Palestine conflict, shall we?
Yeah.
So, what is your biggest fear regarding the conflict between Israel and Palestine, and how can this affect the global economy and the world markets?
yeah. I'm going to tread very lightly. Prayers for all those who have been affected. Once again, I want to stick on the stock market side. So when I'm looking at an investment on a fundamental side, there's a few things that matters. Interest rates, quantitative easing, inverted yield curve. Some people will call them black swans. We've already had the Russia and Ukraine issue that could have been avoided, and we'll talk about that later. Now we have this conflict that is popping up. My biggest worry when looking at a potential black swan event is if China gets involved, because China did make a statement. You guys can go look at about what they said. But if China begins to influence or fund one side of that war, I'm not saying it to be salacious. I'm not an expert on foreign policy, but we could end up in a World War III like scenario. And that's why I've been saying for the past 8 months, 9 months, we need better leadership that is great at resolving situations before they arise. There's a lot that Trump did wrong. And we were having this conversation this past weekend, and I had it with a few people. I think Trump could have avoided some of these. Like, I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for Trump, but I can say he's one of the few presidents that kept us out of war. I wish we had a president in office currently that had the diplomacy of a Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, even a Reagan, to calm some of these fears. Because I think the Russian-Ukraine situation could have been prevented. And if we keep going down this pathway, the part that is scary for us, Russia is able to manufacture warheads at 1/10 of the price that we are, and we're running out of money as a country. The fact that we don't have enough and we've been deploying capital to aid Ukraine, we're weak. Tupac said, hey, now I got my money right now, I want war. Now is not the time for us to get into any war. Bond market is falling apart. People are worried about the economy more than ever. We are aiding too many other countries while not taking care of our own. My biggest concern is if China gets involved, we could go into a multi-year war, and I don't see how we'll be able to win that long term.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about the geopolitical stuff. But let's
dive in. Come on.
Yeah. Well, let me just say thank you, because last week I think you gave great context to the situation and gave
amazing job.
An overall thesis of kind of what's been happening in the region. But even in the sense, we spoke about it last week from the stock market, Ian, we watch oil prices rise, we watch them go down. Talk about the direct impact that war has on economies, because some people will say, well, the market's going to move either way. All right. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it won't be in your favor. I mean, because if we go to war, oil is going to go higher. Investors like certainty. So if there's uncertainty or there's conflict, that's why I was saying rap, like, yes, Hit 'Em Up was an impactful record for Tupac. Every other beef, it really didn't make anybody any money. If you talk to most executives, the liability side of most beefs are not even worth it. So our stock market will be flat or may trend down lower. If you look at most years when we were in war, 91, 92, and those were smaller conflicts that we were able to win, it still had an effect on the stock market overall. So yes, the economy will go, but we don't need another thing on top of, like, listen, the bond market is going through a .com crash and nobody's talking about it. Crypto has went through the equivalent of a .com crash and everyone's acting like everything's fine. The economy's hanging on by a thread. We don't have great leadership. The debt is at the highest that we've been. Debt to GDP is at the highest rate that it's been. College students aren't even passing SATs at the rate that they were 45 years ago. And everyone's like, that's okay. It's not. We are weaker as a country than ever at the worst time, while others are getting a little bit stronger. So it will have a dramatic impact on the market if China does get involved. And if we go to World War III, oh man.
So
we may see a 40% drop in the market.
Let's talk about Bill Ackman, shall we? What are your thoughts on Bill Ackman? We posted this on Instagram, and this is relevant because this is a financial conversation. So Harvard, there's 30 Harvard student groups that signed a open letter. I'll read some of the open letters. So this is the open letter that some of the Harvard students put together and some of the Harvard students group signed. Today's events, this is when it first happened, when the attack on Israel first happened, right? On the Hamas offensive. Today's events did not occur in a vacuum. For the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open air prison. Israeli officials promised to open the floodgates of hell, and the massacre in Gaza has already commenced. Palestinians in Gaza have no shelter for refuge and nowhere to escape. In the coming days, Palestinians will be forced to bear the full brunt of Israel's violence. The apartheid regime is the only one to blame. Israeli violence has structured every aspect of Palestinians' existence for 75 years, from systematically land seizures to routine airstrikes, arbitrary detentions to military checkpoints, and enforcing family separations and targeting killings. Palestinians have been forced to live in a state of death, both slow and sudden. This is what some Harvard, they put that out, right? Bill Ackman, who is a billionaire and one of the most powerful people on Wall Street, he responded on Twitter, very upset about the I don't know if he went to Harvard or not, but he was very upset about what those Harvard students had to say. And he, in response, said that he wanted to get the names. He pushed Harvard to release the names of the students that were responsible for those words. Quote, none of us inadvertently hire any of their members. So he said that he wanted to make sure that no Wall Street firms inadvertently hired any of the students, essentially saying that he wanted the names of Harvard students so he can make sure that they would never get hired on Wall Street. Now, this is extremely controversial because obviously it walks on freedom of speech, right? What this country is founded on. And even the ex-Harvard president was concerned about this and said it seemed like McCarthyism. This was when everybody was scared to be called a communist, right? And if you were labeled a communist, then your whole career would just be blackballed. So this is extremely relevant because this show is called Market Mondays, and we talk about the stock market. And Bill Ackman is one of the most powerful people on Wall Street,
billionaire, hedge fund,
stock market. So I think it's interesting because he didn't say that he was going to just make sure they never worked for his company. He said that he was going to make sure that none of us, keyword us, inadvertently, it's meaning that they're already not going to get hired if they know for sure, but they just want to make sure that they're not making, he wants to make sure that none of us. So what this is saying is that he's speaking
by us, he means they,
any Wall Street firm.
Yeah, they,
Goldman Sachs, you name it.
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting that he would say this publicly, and this has caused a lot of controversy in the news. So I think that this is important on a few different aspects of it. A, from the media standpoint, because if you heard what I just said, those are just the words. I think it's important for media to be non-biased. And we live in a day and age where there is really no media that is non-biased. Earning Leisure is non-biased, but for the most part, none of these major media corporations are non-biased. Yeah. And even how they framed the letter from the Harvard students, a lot of media publications deemed it as pro-Hamas. They never even mentioned Hamas at all. And like I said, this isn't, I'm not even taking the side of the Harvard students, but we just have to be factual, right? They never said that they were pro-Hamas. They were obviously anti-Israel. That's a fair statement to say. But even the way that it has been framed is not actually factually true. The problem with the media is that nobody really ever checks the media. So if you just say, okay, 30 Harvard students put out a pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist letter, well, you're playing with semantics and you're playing with words. And now because hardly anybody, I'm sure, has even read the letter. Mm-hmm. So before you even read the letter, you're already going into it with a tainted view. I'm assuming Bill Ackman read it because he's an intelligent person and very rich. So I'm assuming that he read it, but maybe he didn't read it. Maybe he just saw the headline. Who knows? But I think that it brings out a very dangerous point in this country when somebody can openly vow to block the careers of somebody because they have an opinion. They didn't fund money to this. They didn't say like, we're going on the front lines to fight ourselves. They openly wrote an opinion in a peaceful manner, right? And you could disagree with their opinion. That's something that you have a right to as an American, and you can choose not to hire them in your company if you want to. But to openly try to collude with every single Wall Street firm to stop their hiring because they don't agree with you, well, it's such a dangerous precedent. And it would never happen if it was for another disadvantaged group. If anybody said anything disrespectful about black people, I've never seen this level of blackball happen. In fact, you could even become president, because when Donald Trump called the Central Park 5 rapists, and he actually said that they should have the death penalty, and they were 16 and 17 years old. Yeah. They weren't even adults. And then it comes out that they were exonerated and that they were actually completely misused by the justice system, that they never committed the crime at all. They actually got like $60 million from New York City, and he said that was a waste of taxpayers' money. He doubled down on the statement, and he became president. So we're living in very interesting times, and I think that the media is at a very important part of society, and we must have free press. We can never be bullied. The press can never be bullied, and people's opinions have to be respected across all aisles. Because if once we start to walk on people's opinion, then we really compromise the integrity of any level of democracy that we think we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everything you said is I'm 100% in agreement with, but it's interesting when you think about the statement being made public. Imagine the conversations that are being had in private. Right? Like, yep. It makes you think about that part. But the other thing that's also interesting that I think gets overlooked is that rather than talking to the school, he's attacking the students, right? He could have just said that, hey, if we support Harvard, and this is my alma mater, we're not going to be a booster for Harvard anymore. He specifically is going after students, which is interesting, right? These are the future of our society. This could have been a learning moment. Even if he thought that he disagreed with them, this could have been a moment for him to engage with them and have conversation, right? Because ultimately there could be an understanding that comes from that conversation. But to put us, right, to speak about an entire industry, right? When we spoke to Van Jones and we talked about finance, and we talked about the financial structure of America, the heart of it is Wall Street. So what you're doing is derailing and putting up a roadblock for any financial progress. That's just from a standpoint, even if they wanted to be in the world of finance, maybe they didn't, but to have their names released, that could affect them in any other career field, right? Just because they had an opinion or they exercised their freedom of speech, which is interesting. But these are the things that are happening, right? So like we always try to go over our mindset and the conversations that we're having. These things are happening in public, but so many more conversations that happen in private that are probably similar to this that are never going to be released, which is important. That puts us in a position to say, you know what, we're part of media. We see how this is going. We're going to say something because we have the right to.
You have to, I don't want to take the other side of it, but I do want to highlight a couple things. Number one, you have to be very careful of what you say. Number two, there's a reason why people have always told people to stay away from religion and or politics. Because once you take a side, you then are going to upset potential enemies that may be on the other side of that conflict or advice that you're giving. I do think it's unfair for him to call them out. But the other part of it is, if he went to Harvard, I think he graduated 88, then went to Columbia as a donor there, isn't the purpose of power to be able to do what you want to do with it? I ask all the time, what's the purpose of having FU money if at some point you can't say FU? I think if someone agrees with what the student said, they should hire them at their firm. The way the data is skewed, though, not many will. I think it's unfortunate. Even here, there was one episode, I won't say what guests, but some of the audience members were unfavorable to the guest and had some comments in YouTube, and they ended up on the blacklist. You got to be careful what you say to people. People aren't always going to tell you and publicly, hey, I'm going to get my lick back. But on the back, you have to be and we've had these conversations privately about diplomacy, when to attack, when to retreat, when to not give certain things energy. It's unfortunate, but in the time we're in, if you're going to take a stance and you're not willing to back that stance with your own capital, you could be in trouble. You really could be. Also, we talked about it before. Freedom of speech was really made for in your house and in small private gatherings. You can't say whatever you want to in public and online. It's no different. And I'll say this for those of you who work in corporate. I had a stock club call Saturday. I 4 times in a row begged everybody in Red Panda, stay away from this topic, your thoughts, political disposition, because the same thing is going to happen to you. If you so choose to take a side and you're wrong or you get attacked, that is the price of speaking. I know we have this illusion of a democracy, really a republic in the United States of America, but this has been, and expect like the thing that I saw from most of us that are black, it's like this has been happening to us in every industry. It's unfortunate that it happened to them, yes, but this kind of treatment has been happening to us forever. I do think people need to be more mindful of words.
I think it highlights a few things. So you're right. You have to, if you're willing to speak on something, you have to be able to deal with the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And there's always consequences for everything. But this is why I think that is dangerous, because when I think of Harvard, I'm looking at student organization putting out a letter that's almost similar to like a press. That's like press, right? So when it's just a random person on Twitter saying something, you got if you say something, but because at what point does it stop, right? At what point does somebody's personal views, opinions, or stating the facts, you start to walk a thin line? This country was built on freedom of speech. That's essential. The reason why America has been looked at in this light is because most countries in the world don't have free speech. Most countries in the world, you say something about the president, you can actually get killed.
Absolutely.
Right? In America, like, we've had the ability to say F the police, right? Like they said that, and then or talking about the president, and Eazy-E walks through the White House with the Jerry curl. Like, I mean, like this is our culture, hip hop, but that's an example that in other countries, nobody, if you would have said F the police, you would have got killed.
Yeah, or arrest the president.
If you would have said something about the president, your brains would be blown out on the street. Well, who knows how this country might look in 50 years or 100 years, right? If we take an authoritarian approach to things and limit people's freedom of speech and publicly do it with such confidence, right? It wasn't even like it was done in private. If we publicly start to denouncing people's freedom of speech in such confidence, well, now you make people scared to speak. And now once you make people scared to speak, now you compromise freedom of speech, you compromise the free press, and you create a very dangerous situation. So I think that you're right for sure, but you have to at some point question authority, because if you never question authority, then it'll just be status quo, and that's not the way to have a productive society, by just following status quo. We have to have uncomfortable conversations. We have to have debates. We have to be able to question things publicly without getting denounced and villainized. Right? It's part of this is part of American culture. Right? Mm-hmm. If we don't have this, we don't have America.
This is part of it.
Quick question.
Like I was saying, it's important, right? But you take into conception, like we're talking about a student body group, and so the average student in college is what, 18 to 23, right? So you're still talking about minds that are still developing. And even in Ackman's statement, when he's saying we should be made aware of people who support terrorist groups, like you said, there was nothing in there that says he's.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They never said they supported terrorists.
I'm talking about his response. So his response is that if people are supporting terrorist groups, we should be made aware of that, especially if these are people that we're going to potentially hire in the future. Inaccurate. But what that does is when other CEOs read his statement, they're going off of his inaccuracies. And so you get the CEO of Sweetgreen saying, I want to know who they are so I can never hire these people. Right. And so we're talking now this isn't even a financial conversation anymore. Now this is just like any career path that you're choosing. If your name is now released,
it's over with.
It's like you're done.
Yeah.
For a statement or a group that you came together with when you were in high school or just out of high school, in college, 19 to 23, and you said something that somebody misconstrued, media picked it up, it was inaccurate, the statements were inaccurate, and now your life is ruined.
I don't even want to take the other side of the argument, but can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
What me at Red Panda and you guys are earning your leisure hire anyone that said anything favorable about any neo-Nazi group?
Well, let me ask you this. It's already happening because Robert Kiyosaki, well, I read his book. I say that his book changed my life. When he says things like the Black Lives Matter, terrorists, and George Floyd, paraphrasing, it's kind of he's resisting arrest and all these things. It's already done.
Yeah,
we vote. The public has already voted for Donald Trump, who we can go through what he says a variety of different times
on a weekly basis.
I mean, we can just go through sports. We can go through this whole list of things. So to answer your question, we never had power in this country. So that's not even a fair question to ask because we don't control power. We, as far as Black people, we're not in a position to blackball anybody. We've never been. We can't blackball anybody from politics. We see that they rose to the highest level of power. We can't blackball anybody from finance. We see that they openly disrespect Black people and they rise to the highest level of power. We have never been in a position to actually enforce any level of being able to blackball anybody. So,
well, the bus boycotts, I think we just conceded for the wrong things when we had leverage. There's a bunch of brands where we can turn around and make not popular if we choose. I don't think we care enough to.
Boycotting something and actually blackballing somebody is two different things. Yeah. We can boycott things and say we're not going to support this business. I'm saying as far as having the power, vocally or non-vocally, to go in a board meeting and say like, nah, this person's not getting hired. And we're not going to put money behind his campaign. And we're not going to give him, that's something that we just don't have. We've never had enough power to, and we still to this day don't have enough power. So it's hard to even speak from that hypothetical because we're not in that position. We haven't, but we're in a position where we can be blackballed. And that has happened continuously. Ackman said it verbally. And like I said, this is bigger than just the Harvard students, but this brings up how many people?
Yeah, it's a big issue.
How many people have said something where they supported Malcolm X and they didn't agree with you supporting Malcolm X? And you'll never know that you didn't get hired. Mm-hmm. You never know that you didn't get corporate funding. How many people supported the Black Panthers, the real Black Panthers, not the Marvel? And just by you saying that, you never know that was the reason why it didn't work out for you. You never know that that's the reason why you didn't advance in your career.
Yeah, you didn't get that home loan that could have changed your family's trajectory 45, 50 years ago. It's implicit. It's not as explicit as him saying this.
But okay.
The last point, if we can state the obvious, Ackman's ethnicity plays a lot into what he said, and as it should.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to dance around it, but I also don't want to turn up on it. But it's like people have to be mindful of the repercussions of what they say. And we've seen people get canceled before over similar comments. Just because you're in college doesn't negate you of responsibility for it. Do I think it's fair? No, but this is the truth. This has always been done. This is not new. And he's not the first one publicly to say it. Like, even at one point when I went to Indiana University, if you said anything crazy about Bob Knight, it was going to affect your life on campus. At one point, like, Bob was king of Bloomington. If you said something disparaging about him, it would have an impact on your grades and how teachers felt about you if they were pro him. This has always happened. The biggest thing I want us to take away is free speech is not free. Press is not free if pharma is paying for it. And we've never had the right to publicly say whatever the fuck we wanted to.
But even the Bob Knight thing, that's a good example until you see him putting his hands around the kid's neck. Now the views about
you should have made the layup or pass the ball to Captain.
You know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? Like,
the layup. Coverdale was making them three. Hey, babe boy, you should have made them layup. I'll choke you too. You missed 14 layup. I'm just joking. These jokes are written by 85 South. Shout out to AJ Moyer, AJ Guyton, right? But Alan Henderson, you should have made the layup though.
The last thing we'll say about this is, how do you feel about DJ Vlad saying that Drake is the most famous Jewish person in the world, and DJ Khaled is the most famous Palestinian person in the world, and they haven't said anything yet, and he's disappointed that they haven't made comments?
I think Drake and Khaled realize if they make a statement, it would be too detrimental for their brand because they're not well versed enough in it to speak on it, and it will have an impact on their lives. Everyone doesn't have to make a statement. Vlad, you should make a statement.
I think he
make
did.
Your statements. Continue to put out what you're putting out on KFD and pay your workers better.
All right.
Put out. All right. Shout. Okay.
All right.
TV time.
And then I think we have to offer also
Nabisco.
My thing with the Vlad situation is that, once again, he asked Drake. He said in Jewish law, Drake's mother's Jewish, so he's Jewish by Jewish law. He was raised in a Jewish community. He gave a whole long list of things that, Drake says he's Jewish, so he should speak as a Jew. He should speak on Jewish issues. My thing is, I've never heard Vlad ever say that, and this is by historical law, definitely by American law. If you had one drop of black blood in you, you would consider black, right? This is on the slave plantation. If you were light skinned, you might have got treated a little better, but you were still black. You never was treated as a white person. So Drake's father's obviously black. He's a black man. Drake is entrenched in hip hop culture, spent summers in Memphis, Tennessee, and is a hip hop artist. I don't think anybody would debate that he's a black man, just like J. Cole, who's biracial, or President Obama, or a variety of other people. But I've never heard him ever say that Drake, as a black man, has an obligation to speak on black issues. So that's interesting. But then also, I think that, it is wise as a celebrity, if you don't fully understand what you're saying, to say nothing at all. We saw Justin Bieber put up praying for Israel with a picture of Gaza. And and you know what? It's better not to say anything if you're not we have a weird celebrity obsession, and like, it's like even Floyd, like, Floyd is one of the greatest boxers of all time, and his business acumen is wonderful. We interviewed him at Market Mondays, and the first time I met Floyd at Market Mondays, he had glasses with no lenses in them. So I say that to say,
you always bring it up.
No, just being honest with you. No, just being honest with you. So
no, you're painting the picture.
Going for something that didn't work.
You got to paint the picture so vivid they can see it clearly with their eyes.
I wouldn't necessarily take world views from Floyd Mayweather. Is not my go-to. He's not my go-to.
But we've had this conversation, right? In certain communities, we look for pundits that are experts or are well versed in geopolitical issues, right? In our community, we look to entertainers.
Is it that we look to it, or the media pushes them? Because there are.
How are we talking? Hey,
let's talk.
The media interview, that goes back to the Vlad thing. Yeah. Why do you obsessed for a Drake comment? There's plenty of qualified people that study this for years.
Yeah,
that's relevant, that can actually have an intelligent conversation. So we're pushed on the fact of, let's see what LeBron James is going to say. Let's log on Twitter and see what DJ Khaled has to say. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that part of it is the media obsession with celebrities that forces us to always look. Because the first thing that happens, George Floyd had the first thing we do is go to our favorite celebrity and see what did they go into stories, and then we check because every hour.
It becomes a story, right? If one of them say it as a celebrity, then it's going to more clicks, right? For that business, for the media business to work, you have to have people who are going to draw eyes and attention to a statement or to a story. And so the fact that they keep going to them is for that exact reason.
But like,
are they qualified?
No, but they have influence. So it's like Muhammad Ali, right? This is a perfect person who was actually qualified to speak, and he had a lot of influence. And he's somebody that was a leader, even though he was an entertainer as far as boxing. He was an athlete, right? But like I said, every athlete's not Muhammad Ali.
No.
No.
That era of athlete, Muhammad Ali.
Nah, Kyrie, you got Kyrie.
Bill Russell.
Bill
Russell. Jim Brown. Kyrie.
But Kyrie also got demonized.
Jaylen Brown, Kyrie Irving. Kaepernick had his moment in time. He sparked a
but
situation.
He never spoke.
He didn't speak. But to his point, to his credit, maybe he wasn't confident
or qualified,
right?
True.
Yeah.
All right. Switching topics. We have a guest, and this is something that is extremely important. Back to the financial conversation. Yes. So Ashley Bell of Redemption Bank, Black-owned bank, like officially Black-owned bank, and it's an interesting conversation. I was just reading an article where him and Dr. Bernice King, I believe that is Dr. King's daughter.
Yeah, Coretta Scott and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yep. Yes. So yeah, they're partners, and they having the first Black-owned bank in the Mountain West region. Mm-hmm. I believe the bank is based in Utah. Very interesting location for a Black-owned bank, and a variety of other different things. So yes, can we welcome our guest?
Let's bring him up.
Hey,
how's it going?
Ashley, how's everything going, man?
It's going good, brothers. How are you?
Very good. Great, man. Good seeing you again. We ran into each other in the airport a few weeks ago.
That's right. That's where we live. See you on the block. It's the Atlanta airport. It's a new block.
So that's a fact. So all right. So let's talk. We talked about Redemption Bank. We spoke to you on the phone, and you explained the bank. And a Black-owned bank is extremely important. There's very few Black-owned banks in the United States of America. And can you explain the process of starting the bank? How did it get started? Utah, the whole spiel behind what's going on.
Yeah, it's we're in a very interesting time in our nation's history. When we look back at the night that my co-founder, Dr. King's father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated, we had over 135 Black banks in America. And today we have 20 or less. So just think about that. The night he was assassinated, we had over 135 Black banks, and now we only have 20. And that's not because of some, M&A action. It's really because, Black banks struggle because Black people struggle. When you have a bank that holds the ambitions of your local barbershop, your church, your faith-based organization, and every time America has an economic downturn, Black people are the first to get fired, and when it's over, we're the last to get hired back. Well, the banks that hold that money are going to be the first banks to go down. So precipitously, since 1968 to today, every time we've had an economic downturn, we've lost a third of the Black banks. We've been whittled down to 20. And now the conversation is like, well, we got to have a realistic community conversation about one, why do we need Black banks? And two, sort of what is it going to take to create more of them and to make the ones we have more robust? The first thing is we need Black banks because when you look at approval rates, Black banks approve Black people for home loans at 85%. There's no white bank out there approving 85% of Black people for home loans. It doesn't happen that way. When you look at all of across the board, the ability for Black people to walk into an institution and know that they're going to get a fair decision, that's Black banks. The anxiety alone behind going to get a loan from a bank that's not Black, there's studies that show so many mental health issues around credit scores and all the things that are involved in that. And you see, and this is what we talk about banking your values. If you right now have a bank and you don't care what that bank does with your money and who they help or hurt, then that's a problem for us as a people. We must always be conscious of the fact that the banks that hold our money while we're asleep, they're using that money either to help us or hurt us. There is no neutrality. There's no you can just sit back tonight and go to bed thinking like, well, I don't know what's going on. I'm pretty sure everything's fine. It's not. You can Google right now and look at the top 10 banks and know who has federal consent decrees right now for discriminating against Black people. And if you hold your money in those banks, you are funding the actual discrimination of your own people. So I say that to Black people, I say that to white people who tell me, or any other race of people that says, what should I do? Well, the first thing you should do is bank your values. If you don't believe that this stuff should be happening, then don't put your money in banks that are perpetuating it, right? So we have to have Black banks. Now, why Utah? For us, it was really simple. You know, Utah is the best state for banking regulatorily. This bank has to be able to reach every Black person where they go to bed. Unfortunately, the Black banks that we have now, many of them are locked into communities that are highly concentrated in low to moderate income areas. So they're fragile. And Dr. King and I created a foundation that tries to help these banks. And we've done really big deals to help big sports and big entertainment do deals with Black banks. You probably saw we did with the NFL. We did the largest Black bank deal with the NFL last month in the history of sports. All the way back to 2020 when we did the deal in Atlanta, which was the first sports arena in American history, 100% financed by Black banks. We've been at the center of this movement to create an ecosystem where Black banks can thrive. But what we're doing in Utah is the next generation of Black banks. It's that Black bank that, you know, I won't name any names, but there's fintechs out there that put themselves out as banks that aren't. Right.
Yeah.
And then you find out they aren't. You're like, oh man, I thought I was banking with a Black bank, but it's really a fintech. And it's not. We actually need a Black bank with the capabilities that fintechs have, because the reality is, brothers, unless we can create a digital bank that is a real bank, a real brick and mortar FDIC insured bank that can export technology to reach Black people that live in Milwaukee, Chicago, the Bay, Detroit, Atlanta, until something like that happens, then where we are is that we have a system where fintechs are actually sucking money out of our community. And let me give you a good example. If I'm in Castleberry Hills in Atlanta and I'm planning on going to get a haircut, my barber's going to tell me, yo, hit me on Cash App, right? Now, Cash App does well because they spend a lot of money in our culture. They spend a lot of money in our rap songs, spend a lot of money. You hear it all the time. Now, the moment I send that $40 to my barber on Cash App, now I got Citizens Trust Bank, which is a Black bank, a mile and a half away, less than a mile away from that barbershop. That money leaves my Black bank, goes to Cash App's bank, which is a white bank in the middle of nowhere that has no Black people on the board, that has all white males on the board, that doesn't do anything to reinvest that money back in our community. So what I just did is I exported my dollar out of the Black community and put it in another bank for other people to use and leverage for opportunities. So we have to have a bank with that digital apparatus to circulate our dollar. Otherwise, we are going to increase the velocity and the exodus of Black money out of our community at such a high rate that we will actually have generational consequences on our ability to sustain ourselves. So this bank is important because Utah is the best state for digital banking. That's why SoFi is there. That's why Ally is there. That's why every major digital bank is sitting in Utah because of the regulatory environment. And we're going to take advantage of that and reach everybody and be able to have that nationwide ecosystem by which Black people can bank together, leverage our money together, and grow wealth together.
Yeah, I mean, lowering the landscape is vitally important. That was part of our conversation of looking at all the financial institutions that are in Utah. We actually got to, we were there in February for the All-Star break, and we were looking around like they're here, right? Even though 2% of the population is African American, we were looking at like, what, the first Black-owned bank, what does this really mean? So talk about that process, right? Because your story is very unique. You're the first bank to acquire a white-owned bank by African-American investors. I believe it was Holiday Bank and Trust.
Yeah.
So talk about that and what led you to that specific bank to say this is the thing we need to acquire and go and invest in.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when you're the first to do something, you learn why you're the first, right? If it's something hard to do, the history will teach you why you're the first to do something. And here's the reality. The reason that we're the first Black investor group, Dr. King, myself, we have good brothers like Robert Smith and others that have invested in us. the reason we're the first is because of this phenomenon that exists in our country called white flight. When black people show up at a restaurant too many times, white people leave. They show up in a neighborhood, white people leave. Show up to the school, they're gone. Well, you can imagine what would happen if black people took over a white bank. The money could leave. And we saw that happen with Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley went from being the staple of an industry to didn't exist in 2 weeks because the money left like that. You can't stop somebody from moving their checking account. So the reason that you've never seen this before was because every time brothers or sisters had tried it, the white people would find out and they would just leave. And then you don't have a bank. What are you buying if everybody's gone? So you've always had to buy another black bank so you don't get that shock of, oh, well, what does this mean? Because you got to think about this for a second. It's a little jarring, for a white person to wake up one day and think a black person owns their bank. Like that's something that they just never would think about would happen, right? So we had to do a lot of legwork in Utah to deal with, they got a very strong church presence there of the Latter-day Saints. You got a very strong business community. We had to go do what we had to do to make sure everybody understood what this would mean for them and how this would be better for them. How being bought by black people are going to bring you more money and more resources. And the first thing is like this, man, look, it's a community bank. At the end of the day, people bank at community banks because they think they get a better deal. They think they get treated better, no matter what color you are. And so what we saw is we were going to give the existing staff extension of employment agreements so that when people called, because the first thing they did is they called the bank and said, I saw in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, we made front page of the Wall Street Journal. This is the most high profile bank acquisition of a non-distressed bank in America.
So let me ask you a question. So you guys brought a white bank, right?
Yeah.
In the whitest place in America.
Yep.
Right. How many people left as a result of finding out that their bank was now owned by a black company?
Not many. But that's not on that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that that's not by accident. We had to do the work to mitigate that. And the work that we did was, one, you don't go to a community bank unless you know who's there, right? You pull up to a community bank, you're supposed to know the teller, you're going to know the manager, you're going to know somebody to make you feel like this is better than going to the big box, right? So everybody who they interface with, I kept on staff. So when they called and they're like, hey, is Tracy still there? What? I mean, just be real. They called there immediately. Once they saw it, a lot of the customers called and said, well, did the black people fire you? What's going to happen next?
That's so
that actually happened.
Order of business. You're all gone.
Right. That actually happened. So when they called and they asked, did they fire you? They said they were like, well, actually, Ashley and Dr. King gave us a extension of our contract and gave us a raise. So when you're paying people and you're taking care of them, they're like, okay, well, this is how black people do business. Now, the thing about Utah, they probably have never had to do business with black people. So we started with a blank slate. So they're like, all right, well, black people came in, we got more money, we got more stability, and they're bringing in more money so that the bank can have more bells and whistles and do the things we wanted to do. The second thing we did is we had to go to the community organizations and explain to them, what does it mean? Because unfortunately in America, when you say black bank, and any black bank would tell you this, 6 out of 10 white people would say, well, does that mean my money can't go there?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only black money? You don't want my money? And I'm like, of course you want your money. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta really break it down for them what this means. And I gotta say that we've had tremendous support. This month, we're doing a big kickoff of all our founders. You guys got an invitation there. It's gonna be something special. The Utah community has gone above and beyond to try to change this narrative of how people see them in the most positive way. And I give them credit. So they're actually, for our founders kickoff this weekend, they're actually flying in to do a unity service, a joint service with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. They're flying in the entire choirs of Morehouse and Spelman to Salt Lake City to do a unity event to support what we're doing. Like that's like 130 people that flying from Atlanta. And Dr. King and I go out there. And it's going to be one of those situations where being the only black bank in the Rockies is going to be tremendously profitable for this bank. It's going to be tremendously an economic development tool for the state of Utah. And the governor said this, I talked to the governor the other night, the governor pretty much said, look, if I can show the world that black people in Atlanta can come to Utah and make some money, hell, anybody can come to Utah and make some money. And that's real.
Yeah.
And so they see us as an economic development tool to show the world that this is possible. So my investors, people who we've gotten to invest in this bank, Too many times when you say black bank, people think it's a nonprofit. They hear the word CDFI, they think like, well, it's not trying to make money, it's trying to help people. And they are. But you cannot be a bank unless you're making money. Let's be real. So we believe you can do good and do well. You can do good, you can help people. You can be a mission-driven institution, but you also can make money for your investors by being in an environment where we're not just asking for, we're not just going to grow this to get more black customers or white customers. We're trying to take this to the next level and be the go-to for industries. Here's what's unique about this bank. Sports financing, and you guys know this world. You know how important sports is to communicate our message to our people. Sports entertainment is the vehicle. You guys are the best at it right now. Like, this is what you do. And we were able to get the NFL to give us their chief technology officer to be on this board of this bank, because the NFL knows that we've done hundreds of millions of dollars of deals before I even acquired this bank through the Black Bank Foundation, financing big sports with small black banks, totally revolutionizing the way capital is utilized on the marketplace and debt. The second thing, Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer, the commissioner, Don Garber, gave us his CFO to sit on our board. We got the CFO of Major League Soccer. We got the chief technology officer at National Football League. No small bank anywhere has that kind of power at the league level that has oversight and the sort of vision over how this is, how financing is going to happen in these two big sports that are leading the industry. So for us, not only we're going to be a community bank, the place where black people can go and get access to credit and opportunities without worrying about the things they worry about at a big bank, but we also are going to be the center of gravity when it comes to financing big sports in America. This is where you will see big sports continue to go to get access, to make sure that, look, because we're too small to do it on our own. Redemption Bank will not just be the first black bank in the Rockies. We'll be the center of gravity to lift all black banks up. Because every deal I've done, whether it's with the NFL or MLS, we've invited every single black bank to be a part of our deals. And to be honest with you, every black bank in America has been on at least one of our deals, except for one. Out of 20, 19 have been with us. And we think this is giving us another opportunity to uplift everybody by going into these deal flows. And I'm going to tell you one last thing, why these deals matter. Because when the NBA shut, when they marched off the field and COVID hit, they built a bubble. They played every game. They had a whole championship. They didn't miss one game. Every game was on TV. Well, the loan that we did with the Atlanta Hawks and the NBA, that check was coming in from the NBA on time every month. When the barbershop shut down, when the building fund was being used for other reasons at the church because COVID was hitting, and these banks were not getting the support from the fragile businesses that were shut down, having a diversified portfolio in every industry is important, and especially for a bank. So what big sports provides is an economic downturn proof source of income. So what I tell the commissioners of big sports is, by banking with us and banking with black banks, you actually are helping out the communities that produce your talent in the first place. You can't exist without these communities and the people that come from them. So you want to help out grandmama and her church. You want to help out the brother who's trying to start a business and needs that black bank there for him because nobody else is listening to him. Help us out by helping these black banks do deals that white banks do every day. And I can guarantee you, by doing that, you'll have what's called this impact banking will be a force multiplier in the community. And what Redemption is going to be doing is lead that effort from the best state for banking and export those laws and those opportunities to black banks across the country.
Quick question for you. I get your pushback on fintech, but what exceptional products, services, technological innovations do you guys plan to launch for the consumers that you want to bank with you and that are banking with you, so that they can leave those fintech applications alone?
Brother, that's a great question. And let me explain to you where I think this goes in the larger picture. You're right. The innovation that fintechs provide will always be faster and more innovative than banks just because of how they're set up. Here's the problem. I own a fintech. I own Ready Life. We all got the same problem. When you us, you Greenwood, or you Mochify, or SoFi, it doesn't matter. The problem is, when you're banking as a service, you have to sit on top of a bank with the technology to provide that service. So if you're Ready Life, we sit on top of a white-owned bank. If you're Greenwood, you sit on top of a white-owned bank. All of them do. But you can't fault them for it, because there isn't a black bank in America that can have the technology for them to exist. So we ultimately are trying to answer that question. We're building this bank in the most tech-forward state, so that whoever the next generation of entrepreneur is in the fintech space, that they don't have to sit on top of a bank that's not connected to their community anymore. So whoever the next Ready is, whoever the next Greenwood is, Cash App, Venmo, that they can sit on top of a Black bank now and be able to still do what they do. So what we're providing is an access point for entrepreneurs to sit on top of our bank so that they can go to the marketplace and provide all the innovative service. But the difference is when I'm on the block in Atlanta and I'm about to do a haircut and my barber asked me to hit him on Cash App, the difference is that money won't leave Atlanta and go to some bank in Ohio, that it will go to a Black-owned bank whether I use any fintech that's tied to our bank. So the goal for us, close that loop on the ecosystem, create a bank that any fintech can sit on top of so we can turn that money in the community and not export it through the apps that we have now.
So, okay. So banks make money by investing other people's money, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. And they invest the money in
loaning it out. That's basically it. They take your deposits, they loan it out, live on the spread primarily.
So what is you guys investment strategy, or what do you guys invest the consumer's money in?
So it's not about necessarily investing at the holding company level. Any investment we make has to be approved by the federal regulatory bodies. There will be opportunities to do that, and I do think that some of the work that we just talked about in fintechs, I think it's appropriate for us to look at figuring out how do we spark more innovation in the fintech space so that we can close that ecosystem. So investing in technology and in businesses that are in that space would make a lot of sense for us. But what makes the technology we're talking about is you have to be able to, in a post-COVID world where, nobody's walking in the bank to do anything right now, unless you just have to. We have to be able to create a concierge level of banking so that right now, where you're sitting at, wherever you are right now, if you decide that, hey, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and buy this second house in New Orleans. I need to just figure this out. We have to provide the concierge level of banking so you don't feel like you're on your own. That technology needs to be seamless, but it still has to have real people working with you. Only 4% of African Americans use small business administration loans, and that's government guaranteed loans. That's the easiest way of getting loans for businesses that have a hard time in the debt field. Only 4%. And I was at SBA. Y'all know I was the regional administrator for SBA for the Southeast United States. At the end of the day, that is one of the biggest tragedies we have out here because we're not getting access to these resources. But I get why people don't do it. It seems like a headache. Nobody wants to deal with it. You have to create what JP Morgan gives a $50 million customer is what we give a $50,000 customer at redemption. That level of hand-holding, working with you every step of the way to make sure you get access to the products and services. So what we invest in is like, we take these deposits that these big corporations are giving us, and then we turn them into loans and opportunities, whether it's your home loan, your business loan, your faith-based organization loan. We create debt-based opportunities. And when it comes to investing, it is critically important for us to look at investing at any business that closes the racial wealth gap and secures the ecosystem for Black wealth. If anybody's in that space, then absolutely, that's something redemption should be looking at investing in.
So the numbers are staggering, right? Like you said, in the 60s, there's 135 Black banks. By the early 2000s, dot-com bubble, we're down to 47. Today, we're roughly about 16 to 17 of those banks. However, inside of that 16 to 17, I don't know how many of them manage over $1 billion, right? So when there's one, yeah. Well, there's one that manages over $1 billion. How do we get the clientele, the corporate accounts, the customers with that high net value to be part of Redemption Bank? Like, what's the marketing plan? What's the strategy to make sure we're getting this type of clientele so that we have enough money to now lend out to our community?
Yeah, so just a little bit about how this banking works, man. At the end of the day, because a lot of these banks are in low to moderate income areas, regulators look at their loans and say they're risky. And now, honestly, historically, this has been deemed as racist in many aspects. They grade out every loan. And I've talked to Black bank presidents that would tell me, I got regulators coming in here grading my loans for a barbershop as risky when these people have never missed a loan. They paid on time. They've done everything I've asked them to do, but because they're in this neighborhood, they get treated as though it's risky. And what that means is if that loan's for $100,000, then the regulator tells that bank, you need to keep $100,000 of cash in your reserves because that loan may go under. Now, what that means is that you got to keep that $100,000 and it's not on the street making money anymore. You got to hold it. You got to hold it. So what we do to get around that, what we're going to be able to do is say, look, we're going to cast a wider net. See, most black banks are CDFIs. They're highly concentrated in cities, in regional areas. We're choosing not to be a CDFI because, unfortunately, CDFIs are too often equated to nonprofits and they have all these restrictions. Don't get me wrong. They do the really hard work. They are mission driven. However, not taking that label and just being a straight up bank, you get an opportunity to play across the country. You get an opportunity to recruit across the country. And this bank was built by black entrepreneurs. And I think that's the biggest difference. Having a bank that 85% of our black investors are entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, hedge fund folks, private equity people. We got one pitch. Let's build a bank we actually use. That's simple. Yeah. Let's build a bank that you, me, and everybody who wants to bank black will actually use. Now, we can all have a conversation about why we don't bank black now, and we know what those reasons are. Well, let's alleviate those reasons by creating a bank that gives me the service I need and the access to credit I need, how I need it to make sure my business can grow. If we can do that, then naturally, I believe that black people will support black-owned banks. But if you can't make that up. You got to show up with the services. We don't give each other a pass. How many of us got black bank cards in our wallet but may not even use them? And then there was a study at Stanford a while back that showed that 64% of black people said they would automatically go move to a black bank if they felt they got the services that they could get at a white bank. We got to beat that threshold. We have to be able to be competitive, even to get our own people's support. And that's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm not afraid of competing. That's exactly why we're doing this in Utah. So we can have access to the resources and a regulatory environment so that we can compete. I don't want you coming to me just because I'm black. I want you to come because I'm the best at what I do. And you believe in what we're doing because we want to be the best for us.
I think over the last 20 years, banks have been in a crisis. This year, mid-sized and small banks have been falling apart on a publicly traded market. What are some of those services that people need? And what do you think banks can do better, if I'm being honest, to have our trust? Because when I talk about a lot of banking stocks on the show, not many people say that they trust banks, and for a multitude of reasons. Can you address what you're going to do to build those kind of relations where they do trust? And then what do you think some of those services that people will need to make us want to bank with you?
The distrust of African Americans and the banks has been since right after the Civil War. W. Du Bois said it the best. When the Freedmen's Bureau, which was created for free people, ended up being a Ponzi scam and deleting 90% of all black wealth when that bank closed, nobody got a refund. Nobody got an IOU. It was just gone. W.B. Du Bois said it would have been better off if we had remained slaves for another decade than to suffer the ramifications psychologically of losing all of our money in a federal bank that the government created. And we are the children of that distrust. We're still here and the distrust is still real. So it starts with the fact of who's running the bank. Can you put faith in these people that run the bank? And then two, when it comes down to making a decision, I know we got laws that supposedly say it's anti-discriminatory. You should not use race in a negative way, but the numbers are the numbers. We have to be able to think outside the box. Because I'm going to tell you right now, as long as we rely on credit scores in this country as a primary indicator of who's worthy of owning anything or getting access to credit, we will fundamentally have a racist system. So the future of banking has to be around looking at people more than a credit score. The future of banking has to be able to see people from cash flow. And you and I know we're dealing with black entrepreneurs. 90% of us are sole entrepreneurs, and a lot of them just go straight cash because they don't, for the exact reasons. They'd rather just be a cash-based business than go into debt. But that doesn't mean they're not good at what they're doing. They're actually slowing themselves down by not leveraging credit. But if we could go to them and show them, look, the decisions will be based off of more than this algorithm. And that algorithm that Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion put out there says that 50% of black people shouldn't be trusted. That's what it says. And so any system that possibly could believe that 50% of us shouldn't be trusted to get a loan, that system shouldn't be trusted. So we must be at the forefront, all of us who are in this space, and moving our people away from these antiquated algorithms that talk about credit scoring in a way that limits our ability to have full access to this capitalist economy.
So, okay. When Dr. Martin Luther King died, you said there was 120 banks, right? Black banks?
135.
135?
Yep.
And now there's 20. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty disturbing. So how come that isn't something that people have talked about a lot? And why has that drastic, because at this point, there's probably going to be zero. If this trend continues, in the next 30 years, there's not going to be any black-owned banks at all. So what is the root cause for the collapse of black banks, and why hasn't anybody really been championing that?
Look, that's a great question. A dear friend of ours, Mersa, wrote the book Color of Money. If you're out here right now, you want to read the history of all this, The Color of Money, Black Banks and Closing the Racial Wealth Gap, take a look at it, give her a shout out. She did an amazing book there. But let me give you some personal history here. My family started a black bank in 1936 in Georgia, South Georgia, Baker Byronville. This bank was started by my great-grandfather and his brother-in-law. And it was built for the fact of they wanted to create a bank that could finance sharecroppers to buy the land that they were sharecropping on, because everybody knew that when slaves left and started sharecropping, that 10% was just a way to stay alive long enough to keep working. But we created a bank that could finance them buying the land that they were formerly slaves on, and these sharecroppers could go and create prosperous lives, and it worked. Now, that bank ran from 1934, and in 1934, there was about 180 black banks. There was a tremendous amount of black banks. We went out, we lost that bank in 1976. We lost that bank in 76 because the American economy declined right after the Vietnam War. Everything was economically trashed. Really a lot of hints of where we are right now. But we were forced out. It wasn't like we just closed because we didn't have business. The bank closed because regulators were over-regulating black banks and not giving us the same treatment as they were giving white banks. The regulators, at the end of the day, are the police. At the end of the day, they're the police of the industry. And we all know policing is different in different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In our neighborhood, or the black banking neighborhood, traditionally, those regulators have been harder on black banks, not making them have the capital requirements that white banks had, and forcing us into situations where ultimately my family's bank was forced to auction. Not because we were making money. We got forced to auction, like literally auctioned off. And we know what that looks like in the Deep South, right? And ultimately, that our black bank was auctioned off and got rolled up into what we call now PNC Bank. That's the story of America.
So your bank got turned into PNC Bank?
Right.
So this is interesting. You brought up Robert Smith, who you said is one of the investors in the Redemption Bank. In his story, he went from a career of engineering to now what he's done in the world of venture capital. So your story starts in law. I wonder how you come into something as historic that you're about to bestow upon in the world of finance and banking.
Yeah. So when I first came into, I'm a fellow with the Aspen Institute. And when I came into practicing law, I did some time working at SBA, and I was a part of the team to help create and implement the payroll protection program. And we all knew about that. So when the payroll protection program first came out, massively Black people were locked out of that first round. We all remember the headlines, couldn't get access to it. And that for me sort of highlighted in the beginning, like, okay, the reason we couldn't get it is because Black banks had the PPP application, emailing it to their customers to fill out by hand. And at best, Adobe, email, you can fill it in, when white banks was filling it out for their customers, using the data, sending them hyperlinks to approve and getting the money out like that. So by the time we had figured out where the email was to email the SBA, tens of thousands of applications was getting put through the system by big banks every day. And that digital divide between what the Black banks were able to do digitally, it came home to roost, and it hurt us bad. We almost lost a generation of entrepreneurs because we couldn't keep up technologically with the big banks. And that could have been the last 20. That could have been it. That could have been absolutely the end game for us. So Dr. King and I started thinking, like, okay, how do we help these banks increase their digital capabilities, but then also how do we stop them from living on the edge and get them better loans so that they're not just living in a state where the loans are so highly fragile, or are deemed as a high risk of default. Well, that's when we started the National Black Bank Foundation. So that's when we started digging into big sports, saying, all right, if you're in the industry right now that makes money off of Black and brown bodies and talent, then we think you have a different obligation, a different burden in how you bank. And so we start making the case. And that's when big sports, the NBA showed up, then the NFL, and we just closed a deal with Major League Soccer and Truist with Black banks. We put almost $1 billion through Black banks since George Floyd, and big sports and big entertainment to diversify their portfolios. So to help these banks continue to grow, to save this last generation of banks, we have to make sure they catch up digitally. Because I'm gonna tell you, your kids and their kids after that, if it is not digital, it won't exist. The only reason black banks, many of them are still hanging on now, because our aunties and our grandmamas still holding all their money there. But when that generation moves on, this could be it. This literally could be it, unless we figure out a way of making sure that they can meet the technological demands of the marketplace, which is why we had to, one, get a real bank that was brick and mortar with redemption, but we also needed to be in a state where the technology was what we needed it to be so we can survive beyond this. There's no easy fix here, but it begins with, we have to help each other. We got to be committed to banking and impactfully banking with our own institutions.
You're fighting a hell of a uphill battle. I'm very proud of you for doing so, and I want to thank you for it. I do want to ask you though, is it too late to close the wealth gap? And let's say if it is, what things should we be looking to do over the next 10, 15 years? What practices should we follow to be able to sustain our families? Of course, I always talk about long-term investing here, but to our audience, what are the 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give for what you're seeing on the banking side, how they need to prepare?
So, this goes to speak to exactly why I created my fintech called Ready Life, that you can download on Google and Apple. At the end of the day, the cornerstone of creating wealth in our country is owning appreciating property, whether you live in it or not. But owning real estate is the cornerstone of our system. We created Ready Life so that people can purchase homes without a credit score. Fundamentally, I've already told you, I think credit scores are racist because they believe half of us don't have the right to own a home. But 2, we created this system to underwrite off of cash flow for people to have cash but don't have a credit. And 44% of black people own a home versus 76% of white people. So when you ask the question, can we close the racial wealth gap? There is the racial wealth gap. We're looking at it right there. That spread between 44 and the high 70s is the cornerstone of it. And then when you look at the timeline, the arc of when we own a home, the average black person doesn't own their first home until their mid 40s. And so the average white person, that's their second or third home. But if your first home is in your mid 40s, think about how much equity you missed out on collecting over the decades that you could have done if you had done it 10 to 12 years earlier. So to close the racial wealth gap, to me, we have to focus on our ability to buy into appreciating assets at an earlier stage of life. And we have to create access points to getting the capital to do so that is not based on fundamentally racist algorithms like credit scoring. If we can get beyond the credit scores, and if we can start buying earlier and start collecting and that appreciative value over time at a longer period of time, we can see the racial wealth gap close. In our lifetime, brothers, we must live in a world where the majority of black people own the roof over their head. That is what I hope that we can look back on this era when we all put in our blood, sweat, and tears into this movement, that we want to be the first majority black community where the majority of us own a home over our head.
So let me ask you this. Well, I'm going to ask you a quick question, then I have another question follow up. So this is the first time in history that black people have purchased a white bank, right?
Right.
That's actually pretty legendary. Congratulations.
It is.
So there's a large pessimistic viewpoint in our community. A lot of people was like, in America, technically, you're never going to be free as a black person in America, especially playing the traditional game as far as, because they always change the rules and it's rigged. So it's like the Freeman's Bank, and then they take the money. And then it's like you said, your family started a bank, and then they foreclosed on it, and then it turns into a white bank, right? And it keeps happening over and over systematically. They find ways, and then it's like a tax issue here, or they bring up something, and it systematically has always happened since the inception of this country, even before. Are you thinking about that at all? Because you're still playing inside the system, you're an entrepreneur, but like bank government regulations, you got to deal with government and stuff like that. Do you feel like it's never going to be a situation where there's going to be hundreds of thriving black banks because the government is just not going to allow it?
I think it's an all hands on deck, all above all approach. I think the topic for us, to your point about being free, we may never truly be free in my lifetime or yours, but we can get closer to sovereignty. Black economic sovereignty to me means more that means that we have the four-legged stool that every sound and stable community or people has. We've been trying to build it, but I think this is where we got to use this moment in a post-George Floyd world and take all these folks who claim to be allies and really rethink how we can be useful to each other. That four-legged stool begins with education. You have to control your education. I'm talking about sovereignty here, meaning that our HBCUs have to be adequately funded. We should not live in a world where a Black child has to worry about being taught lies about slavery because some governor thinks that he should just make it up and tell our kids whatever. Secondly, our healthcare. We have to have control to make sure we get fair and accurate healthcare. We know that there's racism in our healthcare system. We know that we get misdiagnosed. We get different procedures than other folks because nobody wants to take the time to work with us. Our lives don't matter as much to some people. We have to have sovereignty in our healthcare, make sure we have access to healthcare in a way that is reflective of the values in us and our humanity. The third is capital, what we're talking about. Credit is like water. You find me a community with that opportunity, it's because that water is not flowing to that community. And the fourth, which you also do very well at EYL, is the narrative. You must control and protect the narrative. If we can control how we are viewed by each other and how the world sees us, or at least fight back on these misconceptions of who we are and what we believe in and what we stand for, then that stool is where we can build this level of sovereignty that, yes, the system will always be the system. We will always probably have to struggle against it. But if we can protect ourselves by creating this table, this system, or these four legs, where we can connect education, capital, healthcare, and our narrative, then we can protect ourselves from what may come. And I think that is the purpose of what we all are trying to do in all of these four fields, is that we have to protect ourselves and we must create a level of sovereignty so that the next time something happens, we shouldn't be sitting here watching PPP fly by and everybody else get access to resources and we don't, because our banks didn't have the technology to get us the money that we were told was legally ours. Can't live in that world. Sovereignty to me is the goal.
Ashley, what you're doing is beyond inspiring. It's historic and it's revolutionary. So we thank you for that. I want to shift a little bit because we live in the world, like you said, we can shape our narrative. We can control some of the media that we put out. I know you have a production company.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where content is king, and you did something very legendary that I don't think most people even know about.
Yeah,
when you started acquiring content during the so-called writer's strike that we just came out of. Can you talk about the legendary move that you made?
Yeah, so Dr. King and I love my sister to death because we ride together on all these deals. We kind of like how y'all do it. Y'all show up the tag team, and so Dr. King and I went and bought P3 Media, and P3 Media is another. We on brand, we take Black investor dollars and we go buy a white production company. We stay on brand. This particular brand was
gentrify that hood.
There you go. So
well played.
Right. So we went and bought it because one, we realized, what are you really buying, right? You want to buy the privilege and the access that comes in Hollywood for those companies that we don't normally have, right? So this was a company that had the #1 show on Netflix the year before. This is a company that created the show Suits, which, Suits is not the most streamed show in the history of streaming at this point. Yeah. So, Gene Klein, who created Suits, is now our content director. So we went and bought the best of the best team to say, all right, we need a vehicle by which we can promote the stories of our community and get the access. And the key for us was this company was being incubated inside of Disney. So what it did for us immediately is when you acquired this company, now we got real estate inside of Disney on Burbank in LA, right there next to Marvel, across the hall from Pixar. You know what I'm saying? So that is the access we wanted to create so that we can get past what we think Hollywood is broken. Hollywood is broken right now. If you're a content creator and you got the greatest idea, the greatest story, by the time you get it in front of the right people, somebody and some middleman, some agent has nickel and dimed you that we only probably got 5 or 10% left of your IP because you had to give away everything just to get in front of somebody, right? We're cutting through all of that. We have access directly to the buyers. Disney has a first look, so Disney gets to take a look at it. So if your content comes to us, we can get it to Disney first. Netflix is on deck second. HBO, Showtime. We cut out all the middle people and just bring us the content so we can preserve those economics to make it so Black creatives can have create more wealth without having to go through all the middle people.
Ian, can I just do a follow-up real quick?
Yeah. Please do.
So you acquired Suits, right? You guys own it. This is a show that was on from 2009 to I believe 2019. As you start to see it climb in its viewership, what do you like? How are you guys feeling as you're seeing this happen?
Well, it's funny. I talked to Gene Klein, who works with us. Gene and I were having this conversation in Miami a couple weeks ago. And, for the people that created it originally, they thought it was iconic then. And I think now the big shock is people don't even know how old this show is. People watch it on Netflix. And the only reason people start figuring out how old it is when they pull out the BlackBerries. And they're like, oh, damn, what is a BlackBerry? Until you see them use a cell phone from 2007, people don't know. So it's been exciting. It's been great for us because, we're able to tell people, look, the talent that created this iconic show is right here. And now they're at, a company with Black leadership, and the world is wide open right now, man. Like if I tell content creators all the time, if you have good ideas, we're doing really great right now. If you look at because of the strike, we've also leaned in there. We always take a chaos and create an opportunity. Because of the strike, there's no new content. So we really dug into getting great stories that we can turn into docuseries. And I'm gonna put one out here on EYL that y'all can check out. So y'all get to hear it here first, even though we got a Vanity Fair article coming out on the next a couple weeks. We just finished the first unscripted television show filmed at the White House, surrounding the release of American hostages around the world. And most of them are people of color. So you take what happened with Brittany Griner and you say, for the people that wanted Brittany out, you didn't understand why it was taking so long. You didn't understand why people weren't meeting with her spouse. And then when she did get out, the other side was like, oh, you did too much. You traded her for Satan. Now it's all bad. And so that whole dynamic, we felt the American people needed to understand. So we just finished a show called The Return that's going to come out this winter, where we go into the Venezuelan prisons to record behind the scenes, to record at the White House behind the scenes, to record at their families behind the scenes, to see the release of people of color from foreign prisons that people don't know about. This is the power of telling a narrative, because there's Black and brown people in foreign prisons right now who never bounced the ball, who have no fame or notoriety that the world needs to know about, because their freedom should be just as paramount as anybody else. And these are the stories that I think Dr. King and I know need to be told. And we think it can have a profound impact on the conversation around Black lives in a holistic sense, because, who's worthy of coming home is a serious conversation. And I think the American people need to understand what goes into that.
In the media space, we've seen a dramatic fall in Netflix last year. Spotify is going through issues. Podcasts are in trouble. Disney's in trouble. What's broken in American media from a business model perspective? I'm interested to hear your take. Suits is one of my favorite shows of all time. But what do you see in a business model that's broken that you feel you can fix? And what's your outlook on media companies in the publicly traded market, like over the next 5 or 6 years?
In my mind, man, we're looking at the negotiated death of cable. That's what you really are seeing. They're negotiating the end of cable, because at the end of the day, these streaming services, obviously Netflix is doing okay, but the rest of them are sucking wind. And when they're negotiating with actors and they're negotiating with writers, and they know that they want a percentage of the revenue, it's an impossible conversation if you're not making money to share with somebody a negative, right? But the problem is, if you're Disney, theoretically, why do you want people to have to go through Charter or AT&T to get to you when you can sell your app straight up? So now, and you saw this happen in the Midwest, Disney jumped off of Charter. They jumped off for 2 months just to prove a point. And so Charter took off ABC, Disney off of all of its platforms. The point is, for streaming to make money, they're going to have to get the middleman out of the way, and that's cable. So what you're seeing right now is a negotiated death of cable, so that cable will go back to doing what they originally were doing, which is provide a phone service or internet service, but get cable out of the content industry. So if you're looking at, my thoughts on publicly traded companies, cable is going to take the hit. The other companies are going to bounce back. But if you're looking at the internet services that have been making money off of cable old school, that day is coming to an end quickly.
Well, Ashley,
the insight.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Let the people know. Is the bank up and running? Can they open an account?
Well, we'll be up and running on top of Q1. Right now, they can find us on all of our IG and keep up with us and join our newsletter at Redemption Holding. Redemption Holding on IG, or you can find me, Ashley D. Bell, on IG. We'll keep everybody up to date. You can join right now and be the first up to get your redemption bank card once we get everything where we need it. But I'm gonna tell you right now, man, this is the beginning of a movement that we don't think we may be the first, but we are not the last. There are the brothers and groups across the country right now who are starting to see the light that we have to create banks that can reach everybody. We got to get out of this space where we got to have a bunch of brick and mortar banks. That day is done. You are not going to build a bank anymore off of building buildings and having all this overhead. That day's done. If you can't reach somebody on your phone, you're not going to reach them. So we love to have everybody's, lean into Redemption Holding and join us, whether that's from being a founder or investing or bringing your business over from where you are now. Impact banking means that when you go to bed every night, you want to feel good knowing your money's being impactfully invested. And you can't do that with banks that don't share your values. So line up, bank your values.
Bank your values. Like that.
Yes, Sirski. Well, it's been an honor. I'm sure we'll see each other soon. So, yes, keep us in the
loop.
Hit you on the block.
Hit you on the block. All right, fellas, I appreciate it. Y'all be good.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Okay. Very insightful.
Masterful presenter too. Yes, that's super exciting. Super exciting. And it ties into what you guys talked about with Van. I think it's a perfect tie-in to be in banking and finance and media, like you were saying, control the narrative.
Four corners.
Four corners, man.
The four corners of
the same thing.
One of the most insightful things I've heard from a guest on Earn Your Leisure. I told you after that episode, I said we got a classic. I think I called you, Ian. I went home. I told everybody about it. I'm like, we got a classic. But that piece of that interview was, the way he broke that down was so profound. I'm like, this makes perfect sense.
Oh, yeah. And for all you naysayers out there that like, why are you interviewing Diddy and he's talking about liquor? We need more black banks and black farms and grocery stores. Well, we've highlighted Oasis Grocery Store, who is a black-owned grocery store chain from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
Watch the interview and support them. And we just highlighted a black-owned bank.
And have
a real
before.
actual chartered bank, have before. So instead of you criticizing, because I guarantee you've done nothing. You don't own a bank. You've never even been to a farm before. So it's cliche. Like, oh, why don't we talk about black farms? You don't even, bro.
Stu Leonard's. That's it.
You've only taken public transportation your whole life. You don't even know what a tractor. You don't know what a tractor looks like. Now you want to talk about black farms. But since you're so enthusiastic about highlighting black farms and black-owned banks and not liquor companies, well, you should support the black-owned banks that we've highlighted and the black grocery stores that we've highlighted. And you should make these episodes go viral.
How did last week's episode go?
So Ashley just texted me. Van was the reason that they bought the production company. Think about that, how that's full circle. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Powerful, man.
For all of you naysayers out there.
Who knows what that strategy could have done for you, right? Like you could have heard that four corner strategy. If you haven't heard it, go listen to the episode, go watch the episode. But who knows what that can inspire inside of you?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But we're staying positive.
Of course.
We're staying super positive.
You get proud of them, huh? But also, okay, going back to the Ackman thing real quick. At some point, you gotta, when the kids act bad, you gotta cultivate the audience. I know people like, Ian, you tripping. Listen, you know how bad it had to be for me to stop selling for 10 months? I wanted to kill all the bad little kids. They was a red panda. If I made you money, please put yes in chat. And now, the group that we have now, every call is absolutely amazing because we only have people who want to execute and who are getting amazing returns. Like sometimes you have to cultivate the bad weeds out of the crop in order to make things thrive. So I know, Rashad, it may bother you at times, but just keep doing what you're doing. Activate your true joy. We'll be good. Can I get my leather jacket back for 24 though?
Please.
Appreciate it.
You and Ian switch roles. Like, come on, man.
So let's talk about a few stocks before we head out of here. So okay. So we talked about defensive stocks last week. General Dynamics, XOM, and CVX. So when should people if they are invested in those stocks, when should they exit or think about exiting those stocks?
That's a very good question. General Dynamics, I will probably hold until 293.15. Let me do ExxonMobil next. ExxonMobil maybe 160 flat, and then CVX probably 225. The reason being, if you look at S&P, like, is up 14% now. Over the last year, it's up 21%. So this arbitrage play of being long defense and long oil is really a short-lived strategy. I wouldn't hold these stocks for 15 years because it's better companies that can give you a higher rate of return and better alpha. But it's really more of a short-term adjustment and based on what's going on in our overall geopolitical environment. So those are the three prices at which I would exit. But I'll say 2 Tech 2 Index is still kicking ass. VOO, VTI, Apple, Microsoft are doing great as a result. But those are the three prices at which I would exit those three positions we talked about. Or if Pelosi says she's done with them and gets out, get out.
And she put out her manuscript. We're going with that.
Do you feel morally? Did there a moral issue in investing in defense stocks?
Yeah. And I'm not favorable, but I will say on the other end though, we do, and I've been talking to Red Panda about this a lot. We do need a lot more innovation in our military defense because we're behind. There's one company I've talked about ad nauseum with Red Panda that could be one, but we don't have enough development on our military defense side. There's so much bloat in military spending by design. We need innovation there. So we don't need another Snapchat or another OnlyFans or a dog delivery food cupcake service. Some of the core infrastructure things like we need to be better at. But yeah, is there a moral issue in it? Yes, absolutely. But I can argue in capitalism, no one cares about morals.
Moral investing. It is a big earnings week. We're getting into that season again. Let's talk about some companies, which ones you're looking at that people should keep on their watch list. Maybe some numbers going out about some of them. Let's start. It's big financial week. Let's start. We got Bank of America reporting tomorrow. We got United. We got Johnson & Johnson reporting tomorrow. What's your thoughts on those?
Bank of America, I would not touch. It is a value stock with a 10-foot pole. United Airlines, I'm not the biggest fan of because it is, I use them all the time. Shout out to you guys. But it's not one of my favorites. So exit. Maybe if it got to $16.47, I would want to potentially buy it at that price. Anything higher than that would be too much. And Johnson & Johnson is okay. I like Lilly a lot better. Johnson & Johnson is solid. So yeah, stay away from Bank of America. United, no, until that price. And Johnson & Johnson is decent. Of course, like Tesla, Schwab, I wouldn't touch. Discover, I wouldn't touch. Lockheed is a great potential addition on the military defense side as well.
All right, Wednesday, we have ASML, which is one of my long-term picks in my portfolio. I love them. Netflix is reporting as well. What's your thoughts on Netflix?
Netflix has been doing a lot better. They've adjusted well from that crash that they've had. I really don't like anything in the media space right now. If I had to pick something in the media space, they are definitely the leader. But that sector overall, I'm leaving alone for sure.
Yeah, streaming is a tough business. Yeah, Ally's reporting. Shout out to our good folks over at Ally. They'll be reporting their earnings on Wednesday as well as Citizens Bank. And then on Thursday, one of my favorites, and I said if outside of the Magnificent Seven, I'm putting TSM as my sleeper. Still long term on them. What's your thoughts? They're reporting on Thursday.
TSM to me would be the greatest company on earth if they didn't have that geopolitical conflict. They would be probably number 3 after Apple and Microsoft. It's just I can't afford that risk. But man, incredible company.
We're gonna get it right. We're gonna get it right. And then Friday, American Express.
Love, one of my favorites. American Express, I love. FICO, I love. Visa is okay, but American Express is one that I like a hell of a lot. So those financials, especially like the credit card companies, they've been booming ever since the adjustments in rates as well. There's always a market that is going to pop somewhere that's going to do well. Financials, pharma, tech, healthcare, another 4 corners. 2 tech, 2 index, another 4 corners.
Perhaps.
Well. So, yeah.
Higher rates, higher income.
All right.
Absolutely. Rite Aid is filing for bankruptcy. Interesting.
We spoke about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The day has come.
And can we talk about this Carl Icahn thing real quick? So Carl Icahn has a huge loss trying to short malls in America. And I know everyone wants to recreate The Big Short. If you've ever read the book or watched the movie, you've seen that Burry went through a lot of issues. Even though he was correct, when you're putting on a short, you're fighting every hedge fund, bank, institution that is long in that investment. So you need a lot of catalysts to go in your favor. And, you know, sometimes regulatory bodies may not be favorable or play the rules the way they should be. As you've seen in Big Short. I think one of the biggest mistakes Carl Icahn made here is not realizing who his competitors were, who would go long in that position. And also too, like in order for the entire mall sector to fall, you need the commercial real estate sector to fall first. He's getting eaten alive on this. I'm really worried about IEP overall and where his career is going to land, but you can't make back to the Ackman thing earlier. You have to be very careful who you're willing to make enemies with, because they may want to go back to war with you. You have to be careful. There's no free market. There's no free economy. There's no free lunch. If you take an active position and you have enemies, some of those enemies may go long. So write this down. You have to know the catalyst. If you're going to be in a short, what will make it go long and what will make all of those funds exit that position so that there's room for it to drop. It won't go drop just because you put RSI and some fib levels on top of it. That's not how the game works. Go long. That's why 80% of the trades that I tell you guys here to go long on, I do so because like it's really hard for a short to work out in your favor unless it's AMC or GameStop. Hurts.
Somebody say pause on that go long, but we're gonna let you live.
Okay.
Look, we're gonna let you go.
Okay.
My bad.
You, brother.
Okay.
I love you, brother.
Around. I'm Chicago. I'm 5 jokes.
Yeah. I love you, my brother.
Hey, my name is Richard Balls. Quit playing. Pause. TV timeout. This episode of Market Mondays was sponsored by Oscar Mayer.
the glizzy master.
Right.
Man.
Okay, very insightful conversation.
This gonna get clipped up. They're gonna leave all the Carl Icahn stuff up and go right to that part.
Very insightful. Very, very insightful conversation. Get your tickets to Chicago this Sunday. We are bringing out the full range of arsenal, talking about everything when it comes to investing and anything that you need to equip to come into 2024 and hit the ground running. So this is going to be one of the ones, man. Don't miss this opportunity to catch the final leg of the Market Mondays domestic part of the tour, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Uh-huh.
Tomorrow,
so be there.
Tomorrow we have Ray Lewis, Earn Your Leisure. Tomorrow, 1:00 Eastern Standard Time. Shout out to Ray. And that's it.
It's been real, y'all. Happy birthday. Happy 41st to our brother Mike. 82 baby. Happy birthday, my brother. Love is love. We got to have dinner with him this past week. Celebrated with him. More blessings to you, and happy birthday to Jess. Her birthday's coming up this week too, so happy birthday,
Jess.
Yeah.
Yes, happy birthday. 2 for 1.
My whole life has changed.
Yes, sir.
Drake versus Joe Budden.
Drizzy.
Afterthoughts.
Drizzy. Shout out to Drizzy. Shout out to Joseph Button.
Number one album in the country.
They said that
Hi, Michael.
I don't know, Drizzy. Shout out to Drizzy, man.
Hold your head.
He
dropped the Adonis freestyle.
Shout out to Adonis.
That's tough. I like that video.
I don't care what you like.
Shout out to Joe Budden, man.
That's about
Joe Budden, very passionate about pop culture and music.
Yes.
He's been a steward in this for a long time. So
top 300.
shout out to Joe.
My God.
Yes. Nothing controversial.
Yeah, telling the truth have consequences. Especially
telling the truth has consequences. For sure.
You did a great job, bro.
Joey?
Yeah.
You thought he told the truth? You thought he told the truth?
Yeah. Corey, hey Ian, clip this up. Fuck with y'all, love y'all. I'm gonna keep the option open though. I gotta go to you gotta see the boy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm be brand new. I'm with the boy. Chubb, all that. OVO Ian, all that. What's up?
Got the Letterman jacket.
You already been to the Raptors facility.
Drake's in my top 2 for sure.
We were having that conversation the other night. We got to have a conversation of him being one of the greatest of all time.
Well, even Elliot, we was with Elliot. Shout out to Elliot Wilson.
Shout out to Elliot Wilson. Shout out to Selectcon.
We was with Elliot the other day, and we was talking about it backstage, and I was like, "Yeah, he's in my top 2." And he's like, "Yeah, me too." He's like, "Who, Jay?" He's like, "Him and Jay." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, me too." So
it's hard to argue. His run was longer than Bad Boy and Death Row combined. Kind of tough to argue at this point.
For sure.
Kind of tough. We went
13 years.
08.
Yeah.
He never
even around Atlanta 07.
Never took a summer off.
Relentless.
Number one for 13 years running.
Yeah.
He wasn't?
Number one what?
Artist.
You're saying it like that's not my guy.
I'm asking you a question.
You don't have to. That's my guy.
Was he number one every year?
I always said he was, but some people might argue like Kendrick had a year, Cole had a year.
Was he number one?
Future might have had a year.
Yes or no question?
He's my number.
Has he been number one every single year?
To me, yes.
Okay, because that was different from what you said the other day.
What I said?
You said that you didn't agree with me when I said that. I said he's been number one every year. You said no.
No, because people were exactly like inside those years. There was a Kendrick year. Some people might say there was a Future year. You see what I'm saying? Like there's years where they'd be like, he's not number one.
What do you say?
Drake has been. Look, I'll say this. This is what I'll say. This is what I'll say. Here's what I'll say. Before Rashad or anybody in our area heard of Drake,
13 straight though, nobody else.
Here's what I say, Ian, and we can have phone calls that will vouch for this. Yeah, there was a guy named Troy who was telling people that Drake is going to be the next guy. You know why? Because Lil Wayne was his favorite artist. That was my favorite artist. Him and Jay. Yeah, it was Nas early in my life, and then it evolved to Jay and Lil Wayne. And then Wayne, when I first heard Drake, I said, "Yo, this is the next guy." This is the next guy. That's in 2007, 2008. I used to put people in my car like, "Yeah, you gotta listen to this dude." They're like, he's singing."
Yeah, my brother.
Trust me. So he's always been my guy. Like, we're not gonna run from that. I'm just saying, inside of those years, somebody may say like, "Hey, Kendrick did put out Good Kid, Mad City. Cole did put out Forest Hills." I'm saying he's always been number one. I'm explaining myself. I'm not defending.
Richard, is this not what you recall at the dinner the other night?
There's a couple of things that he doesn't recall. He's not the best with memory. There's a couple things.
I just asked an opinion. I got a whole
there's an explanation, because sometimes if people don't have full context,
everybody's opinion is different. I respect everybody's opinion. I just feel like Drake has been number one for the last 13 years. That's all. That's just my own personal opinion.
But that has changed. Your opinion has evolved.
When has it not evolved?
Your opinion has evolved.
Drake, I've always been a Drake fan. I've been a Drake fan since the first mixtape came out. I wasn't a Drake fan when the first mixtape came out.
To me, yo. Troy, talk to me.
I wasn't a Drake fan when the first mixtape came out.
We need to set up a dinner so y'all can see the real dialogue behind the scenes.
I'll just leave it at this. This is my brother. His opinion has evolved. Is that fair?
Shout out to Drizzy, man. Shout out to Drizzy. J. Cole is the most dangerous MC right now, by the way. He's the most dangerous. He's the most
got
dangerous.
off of this and nobody even said nothing.
He's been on a rampage.
Yes.
These last 5 years on these features. He hasn't missed once. Shout out to J. Cole.
Cole is the best rapper alive. I'm saying it right here.
You heard it.
Affirmative.
You heard
it. It took me 3 years to say it. The last two, he had the verse of the year. He was last year for sure. This year, I mean, he has not missed. I cannot. Some shit you can't deny. He's the best rapper alive right now.
J. Cole.
What's one Brandon tip or piece of advice that you can take for Cole and one from Drake to implement into everyone's businesses for the people like I ain't come here to hear the rap talk?
For Drake, it's two things I study from Drake. Consistency, because he's been extremely consistent for a long period of time. But also, he's probably the best A&R in music, where finding a wave and riding a wave before it becomes a tsunami. He found Lil Baby early. Lil Baby was already hot in Atlanta. Jumped on the wave. Fabio Foreign and the other kid from Brooklyn jumped on the drill wave. The kid Central C from London jumped on the London wave.
Or is he highlighting the wave?
The boy from Jamaica, what's his name? Popcorn jumped on the Jamaican wave. Now Drake, he Jamaican one day
wave. No, don't do that. Now you hit.
That's my dude. I respect it. But you got to reinvent yourself.
The West Indian culture is Toronto culture, so that part of it.
You got to reinvent yourself. One day he's Jamaican, one day he's Brooklyn drill rap, one day he's from London.
Mike, zoom in to Rashad. Take me out this clip.
No, I respect it though. He's speaking in Spanish one day.
So like that. I mean, what you're saying is, I my only argument is that I wouldn't say he's riding a wave. I say that he's recognizing talent and saying, let's get next to this talent and let the world be aware of the talent. So a guy like Yeet, who's on the album now, who like most people have never heard of, but he's been killing it overseas, now has the #2 single in the United States because of that. So like he's I can't call it a wave in a sense that most people in America aren't aware of. I mean, a certain demographic. There might be like teenagers that know who he is.
It's a wave.
You think he's right, but you said riding the wave.
There's nothing wrong riding the wave.
Nah, you're not riding.
It's not wrong. I was in Hawaii. I surf culture. I'm fully entrenched in it.
But this is not that.
Ride the wave. You find the wave. You gotta ride the wave. You can't go against the wave. You gotta ride the wave. Now he helps the wave turn to a tsunami. That's what he does. He puts the Drake effect on it and makes the wave a regional. Right. He turns a regional wave into a global tsunami.
Let's say language is important. Not riding the wave, recognizing the wave.
There's nothing wrong with riding waves.
You're not really riding the wave.
There's nothing wrong with riding a wave. I think you're taking it from a negative standpoint, like he's exploiting the wave. No, he's riding the wave. He's seeing the wave. He's getting on the surfboard. He's riding the wave.
Was that word you said?
Exploiting it. He's not exploiting it.
No, I'm saying those words have come up before in conversations.
They have. But I'm saying as far as he's riding waves.
Shout out to the boy. Shout out to the boy, man.
And J. Cole, I think what I learned from him is the art of quality over quantity. This is something I'm very, very big about. It's not about how much you put out sometimes. It's about the quality of work when you do put it out. So these samples, these verses that he's putting out, he's putting out 16 bars of fire. He's not putting out an album. He's not putting out an album every year or a mixtape every single month or, thousands of bars. But he's very selective about the 16 that he gives out. And those 16 that he gives out, bombs.
I think the biggest thing with Cole is how authentic he is. Like, he is who he is. And what he is great. And he cares about the craft. He respects the craft. He's a historian of the craft. And you can feel it in every verse. Like, he literally is trying to assassinate everybody that he gets on a song with. Very intense. That's the core of hip hop. I'm better than you.
And he got Cam rapping again. You see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
he had the army jacket lining on.
He got Cam back.
So he, you know what I mean? He cares about it. He wants to be competitive in that nature, but he still is wise enough to say, I respect my peers. These are my brothers. But like right now, I feel like Muhammad Ali, and he should feel that way. But I also respect that he's a very public figure who lives a very private life.
Amazing.
That I respect, because you've never seen his wife. You never see his kids.
Never.
But you know they exist. He made a whole album dedicated to them.
I mean, it's like,
you know
it's like Kendrick Lamar too. He's like Kendrick. He's like Kendrick. Kendrick is even more reclusive, but they're both reclusive people. They're very reclusive, quiet, off the radar type of people.
Shout out to Kendrick. K-Dot.
I'm always right. Cole and Drake album, though.
You said Jay-Z and Drake?
No.
Drake
you said
Cole.
Drake and Cole.
Oh, Drake and J. Cole.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Could happen.
Phenomenal. Anything's possible. All right, y'all. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's been real. See you in Chicago.
Love is love. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.